Hey kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
It's time again for Uncle Don, your favorite uncle, the one you didn't know you had, and the one that's not gonna leave you any cash when he dies, because former teachers don't have a lot of cash. But Don, you might leave the little kids with a joke.
Okay, this elderly man and his wife went to bed. They've been married many years, and the lights were turned out and they're laying in bed, and she says, "Honey, do you remember when you used to take me by the hand?" So he takes her by the hand. Then she said, about 5 minutes later, "Honey, do you remember when you used to give me a goodnight kiss?" So he gave her a goodnight kiss. And about 10 minutes later, she said, "Do you remember when you used to nibble on my ear?" And he jerked the covers back and jumped out of bed, and she said, "Where are you going?" And he said, "I'm going to go get my teeth."
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Time now for Uncle Don's Tales. From old Uncle Don, your former shop teacher, now a reformed criminal. Or actually now a guy that might remodel your house, but he's also telling jokes. Hey Don, look into the camera and give us another story.
Okay.
You can't read your notes, go for it, baby.
All right, there was this man from Kentucky that married a girl from New York City, and she was an English major. And they were living in Kentucky, and they were driving down the road one day, and a sign said 20 miles to Versailles, Kentucky. Well, he said 20 miles to Versailles, and she said, "Well, you're wrong, it's Versailles." And he said, "Well, I've lived here all my life, but we called it Versailles." "Well, you're wrong, it's Versailles." So they got to Versailles, and they pulled into a restaurant, and he walked up to the counter, and he said to this high school kid, he said, "Tell my wife where we are and say it real slow so she'll understand." So this kid leans over the counter, and he says, "Burger King."
They weren't paying attention. Good thing they weren't in Peru.
Yeah, that's right.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Don, do you make these jokes up?
No.
Do you read them on the internet?
Once in a while.
Do you believe everything you read on the internet?
Oh, no.
That's too bad, because I'm actually an agent from the Nigerian bank with a scam to hit you with. But let's talk about your joke first, Don.
Okay. There was this lady that went to an open house at an insane asylum. And the director of the asylum was talking to a group of people. And when he got through, he said, "Are there any questions?" And this lady held up her hand, says, "What's a question, ma'am?" And she said, "How do you know if a person should be committed to this institution?" Well, he says, "We have the bathtub test." "Oh, the bathtub test?" "Yes. We fill a bathtub up with water, and we give the patient a teaspoon, a Dixie cup, or a bucket. And we say, empty that tub in the fastest possible way." And she said, "Oh, I'd take the bucket because I'd get it done sooner." I said, "No, ma'am, you failed the test. A normal person would pull the plug on the drain. Do you want to run with the window?"
Another one I don't get.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Welcome to another edition of Uncle Don's Tales. Of course, it puts me upside down to think about the opportunity to deal with old Don on a weekly basis. But here he is, your favorite uncle, with another joke.
Well, there was this blind man walking down the street one day, and he heard the jingle of glasses and bottles, and he just knew the bar was nearby, and he would go in for a drink. But he didn't notice above the door that it said, "Women only." Ooh. So he walked in and sat down at the bar, And the bartender said, well, the guy can't see, so we'll let him have a drink. Well, he's sitting there, and he sensed that somebody was on either side of him. So he leaned over to this woman, and he said, hey, I got a real good dumb blonde joke. Would you like to hear it? And she said, now, just a minute. I'm a blonde, and just to your left is another blonde, and standing right behind you is a female Marine that just got back from Baghdad, and she's blonde. Now, do you really want to tell this story? And the guy says, well, I haven't got time to explain it to all three of you.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Hi, kids. It's time again for Uncle Don, your favorite storyteller. Hey, Don, got any great stories?
Yes, I do. This Carmel housewife and a Fisher's housewife were fishing at night, one on one side of White River and one on the other.
Yeah, they need to do that because they don't have any money.
The Fisher's housewife was having a lot of luck and catching a lot of fish, and the Carmel housewife couldn't catch many at all. So she hollered over to the Fisher's housewife, what are you using for bait? And the Fisher's housewife said, well, come on over and see. Well, there was no bridge and there was no way to get across there, and the Fisher's housewife said, I'll shine this flashlight out across the river and you can walk on the beams across the water. And the Carmel housewife says, oh no, because I'd get halfway across the river and you'd turn out the light.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Hey, kids. Time again for Uncle Don's Tales. You know the uncle that spent about 20 years over in Pendleton? In the big house? And now he's back. And your inheritance is at risk. Hey, Don, you got any jokes for the little ones out there?
Yes, I do. There was this Carmel housewife driving through Noblesville, and it was Christmas.
Don, now take your time. Don't worry. Keep going, baby.
It was at Christmas time, and she noticed that there's a fire hat on each one of the three wise men. And when she stopped at a filling station and asked about it, well, they said, well, we take the Bible seriously here in Noblesville. The Bible said the three wise men came from afar, so we dressed them up as firemen.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Hey, it's time again for another edition of Uncle Don. You know the teacher you had back in school? The one that was your shop teacher? Well, he's out now and on the street telling jokes for a living. Hey, Uncle Don, you got a joke out there, baby?
Yes, I do. This lady just stepped out of the shower as her husband was going in, and the doorbell rang, and she said, I'll get it, and she wrapped a towel around her and went to the front door. And here's the next door neighbor, and he took one look at her, and he said, I'll give you $600 to drop that towel. And she said, okay, and she dropped the towel and turned in a circle, put the towel back on, he handed her $600 and left. When she went in, her husband talked to her husband and says, that was Roy, our neighbor, and he said, did he say anything about the $600 he owed me?
She got taken downtown, so to speak.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
We're back with Uncle Don Roberts, your favorite uncle. He's really not related to you. He just told you that so you'd get in the car with him a few years back. But now you're grown up and you know better. Hey, Don, Say hi to the little ones.
Hi, kids. How you doing?
You got a joke, Don?
Yes, I do. There's this man who was in church, and a minister at the end of the church service said, well, if there's anybody that needs a special prayer, if you'll come forward, we'll have one for you. So this man stands up and walks to the front of the church, and a minister said, well, what can we pray for? And he said, my hearing. And he says, okay, and he reaches around and puts his fingers in holy water and puts them in the guy's ears, and they had a nice prayer for him. And when it got through, he said, can you hear me now? And he said, oh, I could hear you before. It's not that hearing, it's the hearing I got Monday before the judge.
I wonder if you're seeing the same judge I am.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Hey, Don. Got a joke for the little ones out there, baby?
Yes. Did you hear about the three boys that found this dog? And it was a pretty nice dog. And they really liked this dog real well. And they all wanted the dog, and they couldn't decide who was going to get the dog. So they decided that they were going to tell 3 lies, and whoever told the biggest lie would get the dog. Well, about that time, the minister of their church came along, and he said, boys, that is no way to divide that or separate that dog. First of all, you should never tell a lie. When I was a little boy, I never, ever, ever told a lie. And one of the boys says, well, Reverend, I guess you get the dog.
Bow wow, Don. Bow wow, baby.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Welcome to Uncle Don's Tales. You know, your old shop teacher? Reformed, now on the street again. Don, you got any jokes for the little ones out there,
Well,
baby?
this blonde called American Airlines, and she wanted to know how long it would take to fly from New York to San Francisco. And the man said, just a minute, and she hung up.
Thank you.
And what did she want?
She said, thank you, and hung up.
Yeah.
Oh,
I gotta do the math on that one. Let me think. She picked up the phone. She hung up. Oh, well, sometimes these don't work.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Welcome to Uncle Don's Tales. The uncle you wish that you didn't have. The one you didn't see between 1983 and 1993. Everybody at Pendleton did, though. Here he is, your favorite, Uncle Don Roberts.
well, there was this woman that was out of work, and she was going from door to door trying to pick up a little extra work. And she knocked on this door, and this man says, well, I need to get my porch painted. So he says, I've got the paint. So he gave her the paint, and she went out, and he said, now when you get done, why, I'll pay you. Well, about a half hour later, she came in and said, I'm done. And he said, you're done already? And she said, yeah, but you don't have a porch, you got a Lexus.
What size brush do you use?
An 8-inch brush.
Wow. Hey, Don, quit coming into the sign shop.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Hi, kids. Welcome to Uncle Don's Tales. The uncle you wish you didn't have. But you do. And now, Don, a joke, please.
There was a man that went to a party, and the people were milling around and having a good time, and he leans over to this man, and he says, see that woman over there? He says, God, isn't she ugly? And he says, well, that's my wife. And he says, oh, I'm sorry. And he says, you're sorry.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
You know, many of you had this young gentleman as your shop teacher back in school. He used to hide in the locker when he came in the room. But now he's out of the closet, so to speak. Hey, Don, you got any more jokes for them little guys out there?
Well, this man come home from work one day and his wife was packing her bags. He said, "Where are you going?" And she said, "I'm going to Australia where I can be paid $400 for what you get free." And he said, "Well, I think I'll go too." He said, "What are you going for?" And he says, "I want to watch you live on $800 a year."
Yes, what happened is she was like, they didn't very often, my particular case, Don, I'd starved on $0, baby.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Many of you have called in wondering about where's old Uncle Don. Unfortunately, he came into the sign shop today with some new jokes. Hey, Don, can you tell the fans out there a joke or two, baby?
Well, there was this elderly lady that took her cat to the vet. And she said, "I want to know why the cat's not responsive." And he said, "Well, ma'am, your cat's dead." "No, it's not." So he brought in a Labrador retriever, and the dog looked the cat over good and sat down, wagged his tail, and barked. He said, "See there, the cat's dead." No, I played that cat last night." Well, they brought in another cat, and the cat looked the cat over on the table and sat down and meowed. And he said, "See there, the cat's dead." "Well, how much do you?" $585. $585 and tell me my cat's dead? Well, if you'd listened to me up front, it'd been $20, but we had lab reports and a CAT scan.
Hey, Don, don't quit your day job, baby.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Hey, kids, welcome to Uncle Don's Tales. You know the uncle you wish you didn't have, but you do? The one that Grandma tells you to stay away from? Let's go now to Uncle Don, because Uncle Don has a joke. Go, joke.
There was this fella went to bank to borrow some money one time, and the loan officer said, "No, I'm sorry, we can't do that." Well, he came back about 2 weeks later, and the loan officer said, "I'm sorry, but we cannot loan you the money." But about a month later, he came back, and the loan officer says, "I tell you what, I've got a glass eye. If you can tell me which eye is the good eye, I'll make the loan." The guy said, "Well, it's your right eye." He said, "How did you know that?" He said, "Well, I could see a little bit of compassion in that eye."
Hey, Don, you know when you laugh, I can still see remnants of them Cheetos in there.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Hey, kids, guess who's back? Your favorite uncle, Uncle Don Roberts. Hey, Don, you got a story for the little ones, baby?
Yes, there was this man sitting on this 50-yard line of the Super Bowl, and he had an empty seat beside of him, and a man walked by and he said, "Is that seat taken?" And the man said, "Well, that's for my wife." Well, okay, so he left. About a half hour later, he came back and the seat was still empty, and he said, "Well, is your wife coming to the ball game?" And he said, "Well, she passed away." "Oh, I'm sorry." He says, "Well, couldn't you give the ticket to a relative or a friend and they could enjoy the ball game?" He says, "No, they're back home at her funeral."
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Hi, kids. Welcome to another edition of Uncle Don's Tales. The uncle you wish you didn't have, but you do, and perhaps you even go to church with him. Hey, Don, you got a joke for the kids out there,
I
baby?
sure do. There was this man from Indiana that went down to Kentucky. It was pretty close to Christmas. And as he's driving through these little towns in Kentucky, he noticed that the nativity scene, all the three wise men were wearing a fire hat. So he stopped to get some gas, and he asked the guy, says, well, why are all these wise men wearing fire hats? He says, well, we take the Bible very seriously down here, and the Bible says the three wise men came from afar, so we got them a fire hat.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
It's time again for another edition of Uncle Don. He's here on Tuesdays between 8 and 5. You know, when you're on work release, you can only come at certain times. Hey, Don, you got a joke for the little ones out there?
Yes. Why did chicken coops have two doors?
Why do chicken coops have two doors?
If they were a chicken, if they had four doors...
Don, you blew it. We're going to 3, 2, rewind the tape. Okay, we're back with Uncle Don. Don, we'll pretend that last one didn't happen. Hey, Don, you got a joke for the little ones?
I sure do. Why did chickens have chicken
Why
coops?
do chickens have what, Don? I gave you the joke. It's got 14 words in it. You can't do it. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Okay, we're burning tape. Let's do it again. Don, got a joke for the little ones?
Why do chicken coops have two doors?
Why, Don?
If they had four doors, it'd be a chicken sedan.
Got it out of the way.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Don doesn't come to the sign shop much anymore. When he does, his jokes are weak. Don, got any more jokes for the little ones?
Yeah.
What do you got, Don?
How do you instantly know?
Don, you sound like Jim. Let's tire that over again.
How do you know an instantly well-dressed man his wife did it?
His wife did it. Don't get that one. Next. I'm waiting to be entertained. Hey, Don, don't laugh like that. When you open your mouth, we're losing viewers.
Why are like men like blenders?
Why are men like blenders?
You need one, but you're not sure why.
Oh, boy, we are really dropping heavily and quickly.
I know it.
Faster than Don's airplane when it runs out of gas.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Waiting on Don to come up with a joke. Sometimes we have to wait a long time. You know, Don's pretty old. He used to teach at Noblesville. In fact, my grandkids had him in class 35 years ago. Hey, Don, got any jokes for the little ones, baby? No fair reading, Don. Look at the kids.
Why won't sharks attack lawyers?
I give up, Don.
Professional courtesy.
That was a good one. Next one, Don.
If you're stranded on an island with Adolf Hitler, Attila the Hun, and a lawyer, and you got a gun with only 2 bullets, which one would you shoot? I'd shoot the lawyer twice.
Any of you lawyers out there? Don Roberts lives here in Noblesville. You can make a habeas corpus on his something or other. Post facto, of course. Don, next joke.
How many politicians does it take to change a light bulb?
Well, I should know what I just said.
4. 1 to change it, and the other 3 to deny it.
Look, we're not really going anywhere on this skit. He's reading the things, and I'm out of here. Remember, little kids, if you see Uncle Don dressed as Santa Claus, don't go in the little house. Out of here.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts!
Hey, Don, Got a joke for the little ones there, baby?
Yeah. This teacher, elementary teacher, one day said, "Everybody in this room that thinks you're stupid, stand up." And this boy stands up, and she said, "Johnny, do you really think you're stupid?" He said, "No, but you were standing up, and I didn't want you to feel alone."
Don's a former teacher, stood all day long.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts.
Hi, kids. Welcome back to Uncle Don's Tales. We're with Uncle Don Roberts, the uncle you wish you didn't have, but you do. And now it's time for another story from old Uncle Don Roberts. Go, Don.
Well, there was this mighty warship passing through the water one day many years ago, and the captain looked down at the radar and he saw a ship dead ahead. And he got on the radio, and an international radio frequency ordered the ship dead ahead to turn 10 degrees starboard. And back came this message saying, "You turn 10 degrees starboard." So he gets back on the telephone and he says, "I'm Captain Fowler, the captain of the most powerful warship in the world. I'm ordering you to alter your course 10 degrees starboard and be blown out of the water." Back comes this message, "I'm Seaman Johnson. I'm a lighthouse. The decision is yours."
Ooh, obviously that guy wasn't thinking.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts.
Hi, welcome to Uncle Don's Tales, the uncle you wish you didn't have, but you do. And now, another story. Don, you're on the air, baby.
Well, there was this elderly lady that got caught shoplifting.
Yeah?
And she went before the judge, and the judge said, "Ma'am, what did you take?" And she said, "A can of pears."
Can of pears.
Well, how many pears in a can? And she said there were 6. And he said, "All right, 6 days in jail."
Ooh.
And her husband raised his hand and he asked the judge if he could approach the bench, and the judge said yes. So he went up to the judge and he said to the judge, "She stole a can of peas too."
Ooh, hey, imagine if she stole a bag of rice.
No,
Thanks, Don.
she'd be gone forever.
I'm tired of this one.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts.
Kids, there's a time and a place for everything. And this is not the time or the place for old Uncle Don. But he's here in the sign shop. He's got a joke to talk to all you kids about. Don, hit the little kids.
Okay. An insurance agent's wife was learning to drive, and the brakes failed, and she screamed to her husband, "What should I do? What should I do?" And he says, "Brace yourself and hit something cheap."
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from Uncle Don!
Hey, kids, know what time it is?
It's Uncle Don Roberts' time!
It's everybody's favorite storyteller, Uncle Don Roberts.
Welcome to Uncle Don's Tales, the uncle you wish you didn't have, but you do. Hey, Don, got another joke for the little ones out there?
Yeah. Old bankers never die, they just lose interest.
Okay, tell a joke, Don. Was that the joke?
That was a joke.
We're scraping the bottom of the barrel around here.
Join us again next week, kids, for another adventure with Uncle Don. And what does Grandma always say?
Stay away from